Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living Luke 12:6. I'm Wendy and today we're doing 4 Dollar Tree DIYs for your farmhouse fall home decor. Whew, that was a long one. If you like these projects, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. And now, without further ado, let's get started. For our first Dollar Tree DIY, I'm using 3 of the 19-inch wood signs, and I get a lot of people asking me how I remove the paper so easily, and I'm just sticking my CRICUT spatula in between the first and second layer of the paper, so the backing is really still on the wood, and then the rest of the top layer is coming off. And then any sign will work for any season. I've tried pretty much all of them, and so if you have any of the little bits left on there, just scrape that off with your spatula as well. And then I'm taking my spatula and I'm going to fill in those holes, but I'm going to go from the back so that when you push it down in there, you're only going to leave a small little hole showing from the front. And then I'm taking my Waverly White chalk paint and I'm just going to paint over those planks, but I'm going to leave it so that some of that pretty brown color is poking through. So now I'm going to take some wooden letters from the Dollar Tree, and you have to have 3 packs of these because there's only 1 of each letter in a pack. And then to paint them, I'm going to take some painter's tape and place it upside down on a scrap piece of foam board and then place my letters on top so that they don't move around while I'm painting them. And the other good thing is you can just move it away when you're done, and you can turn it over to paint the other side. So now I'm going to take my boards and lay them out on top of each other horizontally, and then I'm going to take some painter's tape, and I just measured in from the end about 1/2 inch, but you can kind of eyeball it because it's such a small stripe, and then I'll eyeball the second one, leaving a really tiny stripe, and then I put 2 together in the middle, and then I added my last piece to make another matching teeny tiny little stripe. And then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in the color Nimbus, and I'm going to go over it, but I'm going to leave a little bit of the white peeking out so it looks rusty and looks like it's been sanded. And then I'll take my tape up. Now I let them overflow onto my work surface so that they wouldn't move, so I have to leave one of them until I get my other tape down. So I'm just going to take the tape off of both sides of one of them, and then I'll take another piece of tape again, and I'm going to put my stripe right in the middle of my painter's tape, and then I can remove that outside one, and then I'll cover the second one so that it's again in the middle, and it'll be even with your lines that are on the outside, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to take another piece of painter's tape and kind of mark where my letters are. I haven't glued those down yet, but I just want to get the area that I know that I can be safe to write in and not really go over when I write out my words. Of course, you could use your cutting machine and cut the words out of your vinyl adhesive, but I'm running a little bit low on my black adhesive vinyl. But did I say vinyl adhesive? Anyway, so I'm just going to do it by hand, and I've had some viewers say that they like watching this, so I'm speeding it up pretty quickly so you can get the idea. But I do have a video where I show how to do this lettering a little more in detail. But also, if you're not really fond of your writing, you could print this out on your computer and then just use the transfer method where you rub all over the back of it with either a pencil or chalk and then transfer it onto your surface so that your words are nice and pretty. And for this, I'm just using a regular fine point black Sharpie permanent marker. So now that I have my words written, I'm going to glue on my wooden letters, and I start from the middle and kind of go outwards, but make sure that there's the even amount of space on each side. So now I'm going to take some Dollar Tree pumpkin picks and I'll paint those white, and then I took some wired jute and I'm going to glue that down on one side and then put some ribbon over the top of that, and then I'll cut it down to the size that I need. And then I'm going to take 3 of these 1-inch wooden beads, and I used a piece of painter's tape to make a little needle so I could feed 3 of them on, and then I'll glue down the other side and put some more of my ribbon. And then I'm going to place all of them upside down, and then using some Dollar Tree burlap ribbon, I'm going to attach all 3 of them and give them a little bit of space in between each. And I'm going to fold over the top and the bottom, and I'm making sure that it's kind of within that same range of where my flower sack stripes are. And then I'll glue it at the top and then the middle and then the bottom, and then make sure that I have the same spacing on all 3. And the good thing about this is that I can also fold this away and store it, and it doesn't take up too much room. So now I'm going to take a pick of some eucalyptus from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to place my pumpkins in there, and then I'll use a nylon tie strap to keep that all together. And then I took some small strips of 5/8 inch ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut those down and then tie those together using a chenille stem and just make kind of a little scrappy bow. And I'll glue that to the bottom of my stem. And here it is all finished, and I think this turned out so pretty and neutral. I think it would be really pretty over a fireplace mantle during the fall and Thanksgiving season. And if you pull out the pumpkins, I think it would work any time of year because there is always something to be thankful for. For our next project, I knew I wanted to use an old rake we had in our icky tool shed, but I didn't realize we also had this smaller one too. I wanted to use the larger one, but it was a little bit too rustic looking and bent up, and it had this freakishly long handle on it, which must be Michael J sized, and the other one is me sized. So I just decided to use the smaller one. And then I'm also going to be using some Dollar Tree ribbon, a burlap leaf, a long fall sign, some raffia, some pitberry garland. And for the flowers and greenery, I'm going to be using 2 eucalyptus stems, 2 sunflower stems, 2 wheat stems, and then 1 amaranthus in this pretty off-white. And then to get the tags off, you probably already know this trick, but if you just pull the top part of the stem off and then slide the tag off, you don't have to mess with cutting it and it getting stuck and all that. And then to keep a little bit of the orange from our fall sign, I'm going to take the little pumpkins from this pumpkin pick, and I'm just going to take off all of the leaves and then repoke it into that stem. And now I'm going to take one of each of my stems and stack them on top of each other, and then I'll take my amaranthus and I'll put that in the back so that it falls over to the side, and then I'm going to poke in my little pumpkins, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side and just stack those up in the same way so that we get a nice little vertical swag. And then again, I'm going to use another nylon zip tie and keep those all together, and I'll arrange them so that I make sure that none of those stems are showing and they're all pushed towards the back. So now I'm going to take some burlap ribbon and I cut these down to about 18 inches, and then I folded it in half, and I made a mark on my workstation so I could cut them all more quickly. And I didn't quite have enough of the burlap, so I had to get a second roll of that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my 5/8 ribbon in different patterns and colors. And I only had one piece of this beige and orange gingham ribbon, so I only got to use that one time. And then I just grabbed a handful of some raffia and folded that in half so that it would be about the same size of my bow, just a little bit bigger. So now I'm going to take each of my strips, I'm going to go about 1/3 of the way down and twist it. And this gets a little messy because you're holding raffia too. And then using my back fingers, I'm going to hold it in place and do the same thing with my darker burlap. And then I'm just going to alternate those so that my loops will be going in opposite directions, and then my different ribbon patterns will be alternating as well, if that makes sense. So once I get it all together, I'm just going to take a chenille stem and wrap it all around, twist it in the back, dovetail my edges, and then I'll do the exact same thing with the smaller 5/8 ribbon, but I'm going to do the 4 different colors and patterns the way I want them, and then I'll flip the other ones to the other side so they're going the other way. And then I'll make little snips in the middle so that my chenille stem can feed in there, and then I can move my loops around more easily. And then I'm going to attach both of these to the middle part of my swag, and using that extra chenille stem that's on there, that's going to be what we hold it in place with. And then once I get my burlap ribbon down, I'll add my little colorful scrappy bow to that. And then I just took the whole thing and I'm going to attach it to my rake in a couple of different places. And then I'm going to also add a burlap leaf from the Dollar Tree and secure that. That'll help hold some of those stems down. And then I added another one and made a little loop at the top so that I could hang it from there. And then to attach my fall sign, I'm going to take a teeny tiny little screw, tap it in a few times, and then I'll screw that in just to the amount so that there's enough sticking out so it can attach to my sign. And I'm going to take some hot glue, fill that little area and on my screw, and then I'll put it on there. And then to keep it crooked, I put some more hot glue on the back to keep it snug as a bug in a rug. And then finally I'm going to take some green and white pipberry garland and I'm just going to feed that all throughout my pretty swag and make sure that my bottom flowers are kind of pointing out and my top ones are pointing out, and then just get it all pretty, and it's done. And here it is, all finished, and I think it's so cutie patootie. I love this so much. I would have liked to have had a larger rake, but I didn't have it, so I just made do. But this would be perfect on the porch. You could use it on your door as a wreath alternative, but the swag itself you could attach to anything. In fact, it would be a really pretty centerpiece. But I love it, and I hope you like it too. For this Dollar Tree DIY, we're going to be using some foam board, a rub-on transfer, a glass frame, and some caulking. And all I'm going to do is pull my frame apart, and I'm going to take off the back holder, and then with some needle nose pliers, I'm going to make those tabs stand straight up and pull that glass out. And then I'm going to take my rub-on transfer and make sure it's in the middle, and then I'll just use a squeegee to rub it down. And if any place comes up, you just want to re-rub it and then pull it off. So I found this tear-off palette pad at the Dollar Tree, and I know this is going to come in handy when I'm painting smaller things. So like this frame, for example, I'm using some brown apple barrel acrylic paint, and I'm just going to paint that on the front and back, and then it's time to make our box and cutting our foam board. So for the sides, I'll need two 25-inch by 6.5-inch pieces. For the bottom, I'll need one 25-inch by 4-inch piece. And then for the ends, I'm going to need two at 6 inches tall, and it'll be 4 inches at the bottom, and it'll taper out to 5 inches at the top. And that'll make sense in just a second. But your poster board is about 30 inches, so the easier way to do it is to just cut off 5 inches from the ends once you get those long pieces cut. And then I'll measure 4 inches at the bottom and then cut that all the way to the top corner, because that's 5 inches. And then I'm going to take a sanding block and sand all of the edges down so that they're all the same size. Now I'm going to take my frame and turn it upside down, measure to make sure it's in the center, and draw a pencil line around it, and then I'll flip it over and push those little tabbies that we stood up straight before into the foam board, and then push down on the back so that they're coming through, and that's going to attach it to our board. And then I'm going to pull it out so that I can put my box together. And I'm just going to use my hot glue to attach all of the corners, and I want the front sides to be facing out so my inside pieces will be covered up, if that makes sense. And then I'll hot glue my ends and place those in as well. And those will be on top of the bottom piece, so that's why we had to make that a little bit shorter than the height of the front and back. And if you want a regular square box, you don't have to worry about tapering the sides, but I just thought that gave it a little more interest and cuteness. So then I took my tube of caulking and I put it in this squeezer outer apparatus, but I found that the top was cracked, and so it was a little bit thicker because the air had gotten to it. So Dollar Tree also carries the tubes that are kind of like toothpaste tubes, but bigger, and that type is a lot easier to use. So I had to enlist the help of Michael J to squeeze it out for me while I used this chopper scraper from the Dollar Tree to smooth it across my entire box. So just make sure that the tips of your tubes, if you do find this, isn't broken or cracked so that there's no air getting in there, and it'll be nice and pliable and a lot easier to work with than this was. And then as you saw there, I stuck some nylon zip ties into my holes so they wouldn't plug up. And then I'm going to use my Waverly white chalk paint and paint my entire box as well as a little bit on the inside in case that peeks out. And then I'm going to take some chalk paint in mineral and make some distressed marks using a dry brush effect. And then I'll go back over it with some more of the white chalk paint, but just with a kind of a dry brush effect, so it gives it that powdery look. And I made sure not to put any of that distressing behind where my frame will go, so it'll be completely white and my letters will show up a lot better. So then I'm going to take my frame and poke it back into those holes after pulling out the zip ties, and then once it goes in there, it stays by itself, but I added some hot glue just to make sure that it stayed secure. So now I'm going to take some Walmart greenery, and this is the lamb's ear in the larger bunches, and those are $3.49, and then the smaller ones are $2 for that bunch. And I'm just going to toss a bunch of these in there. I'm not even putting any foam at the bottom or anything. And then I'm taking some velvet pumpkins from the Dollar Tree in a brown and then a lighter beige color, and I'm just going to tilt those going different directions, and it's done. So I end up loving this so much, and I didn't think about it till later. Well, actually two things. One, how cute would this be with that swag that we attached to the rake sitting on top of this? I think it would be so pretty. And then two, I could have put little pieces of wire into those holes where the bracket was or the holder was for the frame, and then stuck that in there, and I could make those glass pieces interchangeable for the different seasons or just for everyday use. But I love, love, love this so much, and I hope you guys like it too. For our next Dollar Tree DIY, we're going to be using a pumpkin wreath form, some nautical rope, a metal tag, some fall florals, and my Uncle Fred's old sweater. So I got my inspiration from the Loft Home Decor, which is my crazy talented friend Karen in Dracut, Massachusetts. She doesn't have a YouTube channel, which she should, but she is on Instagram and Facebook, and I will have all of that linked below so you can see more of her absolutely gorgeous, and I just mean off the hook creations. And now she used a mop head to make her sweater effect by weaving and braiding all of that textury goodness. But I'm not that patient, so I'm taking the easy road. So I'm just going to take my wreath form and put my sweater right around it, and then I'll cut around all the excess. And then once I get it cut down, I'm going to start hot gluing it to the rim of my wreath form and then just wrapping it over those edges. And this is a pretty thick sweater, so none of the glue went through. So if you do this project, look for something that's a little bit thicker just so you don't have any glue seeping out. And then once I get it all glued, I'm going to cut off the excess, and then I'm going to add some more hot glue so that I get a nice finished edge around the rim. So for my stem, I decided to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to take some nautical rope and fold it down to about 4.5 or 5 inches, and then just glue a few strands back and forth to get it started. And then I'll take the end of a used paintbrush and wrap it around there, and then just keep going, gluing it onto the wood and onto the rope itself until I go all the way around. And I'm just going to fold it back and forth so that it has a clean edge on both sides. And I don't have to do any cutting because it's pretty tough to cut through. And then I'm making it this length because I'm going to have a lot of greenery and embellishments at the top, so I still want the stem to show above that. So then I'm just going to pull a little bit of my sweater material over the wreath form and then place my rope stem on top of that, and I'll secure it with some jute twine by just tying it in a knot. And I'm going to leave my ends long like that because I think it looks like tendrils, and I can cut off whatever I want and make it the length that I want a little bit later. Now my cotton bud stems always seem to fall apart after storing them for a while, so I just use some hot glue and put them back together. And then I'm going to take a few of these super pretty light little leaves and attach those to the back of my other stem, and then put those together with a tie strap again, and then tie that and glue it to the left side of my stem. And then I'll take my amaranthus and attach that to the right side of my stem and let it kind of flow over like we did with the rake. And then I'm going to tie some more jute twine on there just to get it nice and secure. And then I'm going to take some burlap leaves from the Dollar Tree and some metal tags, and I just used some Waverly wax in antique to go along the edges and make it look a little more aged. And I saw Karen had done that on her leaves, and I thought it was just such a pretty effect. And then she also did a metal tag like this where she used some Mod Podge, some cinnamon, and some more Waverly wax in antique. And we're just going to knock that shine of that metal down a little bit with the wax. And then once it dries, we'll add some Mod Podge around the edges and then put our cinnamon on there and then knock that off. And then I used a brush to open an area so that I could write on it a little bit later. I wasn't sure how my paint pen was going to take to it, or did I use a Sharpie? Well, either way, I did one with Mod Podge on it and one without. So just in case I messed up, I made sure to have a backup tag. And if it works, I can use it later anyway. And then to make my bow, I'm just going to take some of that wire rim burlap ribbon, some regular burlap. I did 2 strips of each, and then some 5/8 inch ribbon of the kind of macrame looking one, some black and white gingham, and then my sweet striped ones that I love so much. And then I'm going to put those all together, alternating those patterns with the small ones on top, and then use some of my wired jute to attach it. And then I'll wrap that around the stem and attach it in the back by twisting it. And then I'm going to dovetail all of the ends of my ribbons and foof it all out. And then I'm going to add my leaves on each side of my pumpkin. And then I'll just wrap those in the back and attach it to the wire form. So now I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to write sweater and then weather. And so I did the cursive writing for sweater and then just an all cap writing for weather. So Karen does all of her own writing and hers is ridiculously perfect. Mine is not. Again, you can use the transfer method or some adhesive vinyl, whatever floats your boat and you like. And then finally, I'm going to take some more jute twine and attach my tag, and I'll put a little bit of hot glue behind it so that it stays tilted like that. And then I'm going to take some wired jute and make some curly cues to make some big tendrils, wrap it around the stem, and it's done. And oh my goodness, I'm so in love with this. I love it so much. And it reminds me of my uncle because it is his sweater. And I just love it. So thank you, Karen, for the amazing inspiration. I love it, and I hope you guys like it too. I hope you enjoyed all of these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. If you're not already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below so that we can grow this channel. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!